We'll make a start now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us during your lunch hour. So, as you know, today's session is going to be on how to create a Secret Santa generator using Alteryx. So now that it's December, I'm sure you guys are buying your gifts, getting everything ready for Christmas. And I don't know about you, but in my family and also at the Information Lab, we do a Secret Santa every year. So that's the inspiration for this. So last year I made a Secret Santa generator in Alteryx. So it's just a workflow that takes in all the participants and creates generates the Secret Santas and emails it out to all the participants. So it's really good fun. And you can adapt this for your office or your family and friends as well. So let's start the presentation. For those who don't know, we'll just quickly go over what a Secret Santa is. So the idea of it is that we'll have a group of participants that have two roles, both a Santa, so they buy gifts for someone in the group, and a Santee, so we'll call it a Santee, so they receive gifts from someone in the group. So the Santas and Santees are randomly matched together, and then it's emailed or however method it is to tell the Santa who they've drawn. And then you buy a gift, make a gift or something, and then on the exchange day, you exchange it. So that is the idea of a Secret Santa. I'm sure you already knew, but just in case. So how can we create these random matchings? So let me just go through a quick example of a Secret Santa, a very simple one. So say here we have our office participants, and yeah, so they all want to participate in the Secret Santa. So they all need to be both a Santa and a Santee. So how we can do this is to randomly match them up. And hopefully we don't match them up with themselves. We need to match them up with someone different. Let's go step by step. So we have all our participants and we randomly line them up on the left here. So we randomly line them up in a random order. So we have Dwight, Jim, Pam, and Michael in that order. And then we line them up again in another random order. So if you think of the left side as all the Santas and the right side as all the Santees, so we see that Dwight is matched with Pam, so that's the top one. And then the second row, we see that, Jim is matched with Jim. That won't work. He's been matched with himself. So this Secret Santa combination doesn't work. We've made a random combination, but you've matched someone with themselves. That can't happen. So this Secret Santa pairing doesn't work. So we need to do it again. So here we go for a second iteration. So we have all our participants once again in a random order. And then we generate another random order for the Santees. So in this case, everyone is matched with someone different who's not themselves. So this one works. So this one will go on to be the office Secret Santa combination. So that is the gist of how this will work. So we have two columns, one for the Santas that are randomly ordered, one for the Santees that are all randomly ordered, and then we just match them right across. So how can we do this in Alteryx? So the clue was in the titles of the slides that we just saw, iterative. So we have to use iterative macros in Alteryx. So let's just go over what macros are and then what iterative macros are and why we would use those in our Secret Santa generator. So what are macros? In simple terms, to put it simply, macros are packaged workflows of multiple tools into one. So you can see on the right-hand slide, FYI, these slides are nicked from my colleague Jonathan Allenby's presentation. So credit to him for creating these slides. So on the right-hand side, you can see the macro. It's got a little plus symbol here, so that indicates that it's a macro. And it's actually these three tools, plus an input and output tool, combined to make this one macro. So in essence, that's what a macro is. There are lots of other content that goes into much more detail about macros, some use cases and how you would build one. So let's go over what kind of macros there are in Alteryx. So there are 4 types of macros, but these are the 3 that you'll need to know. So the first one is a standard macro. That's what you saw in the previous slide. So it's very typical. It's just a simple one-way workflow that is packaged into a single macro. There's also a batch macro, which is similar to a for each loop. So if you think of it as the first row goes into the macro, and the macro performs whatever process it's designed to perform. And then the second row goes into the macro. And then again, that process is performed. And then the outcome of that is appended to the outcome of the first macro run. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. And then the third one, iterative, this is the one that we'll be using. So it's similar to a do while loop. So what that means, it's a condition is set for this macro, and it will keep running until that condition is met. So as an example, if you have, say, a savings account and you have a certain interest rate on that, and you want to see how many years it would take for you to reach, say, £500 of interest. So you would run this macro, and it would cycle through again and again and again until it reaches that condition that you set, £500, and then it will tell you how many years that took, i.e. how many iterations that took. So that is the macro that we're going to adapt for our Secret Santa. So we want it to cycle through our list of participants again and again, creating random matchings until a matching that has no duplicates, it has no self-matches. Until that happens, it'll keep looping and looping. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. If that's a bit confusing, let me know, and I'll go through that again or explain it in a different way. So let's go into Alteryx now. I think it'll make more sense when we see the actual workflow. So let me zoom in a little bit. So I hope you can see this. Do let me know if you can't. So this is Alteryx, as I'm sure you're all familiar. The workflow is quite simple. So there are two workflows, this outer one, which you see here, and then a macro, which is here. You can see this little icon. I've got a little Santa hat as my icon. And if you open that up, you'll see the macro workflow. So I'll go into that in a bit, but for now, let me just show you the full outer workflow. So the first step is to input your Santa information. So there are three crucial parts to this. So you need, let me just open this up. So this is just a text input at the moment. But you might have an Excel file or something if you were to collect this for your office. So you need three crucial bits of information. You need Santas, so you need the names of the people who are participating. You need the emails of the people who are participating, and a hint. So this is an optional field, but you need, so say if your Santa wanted to help your Santa wanted to help your Santa buy them a gift. So you might put a hint, for example, Monica Geller here, her hint is no mixtapes. Not a fan of mixtapes, so whoever gets her will know that she doesn't want any mixtapes. So that's the information that you need. For our Secret Santa last year at the Information Lab, we did a Google form that collected all this information. So that's also a really useful way of collecting the information that goes into here. So that gets read into the workflow, and it goes through to the macro. So this macro is an iterative macro, like we said. This does all the heavy lifting. So this is the macro that actually generates all the matchings. And once it does that, it comes out the O anchor. So this is the output anchor, outputs the data through here. And then this next section in the blue box, this next section constructs the emails that will be written and sent to the Santas. So this just creates a paragraph that's easy to read and lets the Santa know who they've drawn. And then it outputs in two ways. So the first way here is an email tool. So this one just creates an email and sends it to the email field in your data. So it emails all your Santas to let them know who they've drawn. And then this bottom one is a YXDB output. So this one is important to have, so you have it for your records. So if you want to keep the secret, probably don't look at it. But it's really useful for, say, the email didn't work to a certain person, it didn't send to someone, and they want to know who they drew. Or if there's a mix-up of some sort, then you have a record to be able to check what went wrong or who has who, in case they forgot or lost it. So really important to have this as well. So let me go into the macro now to show you how it works, and then we'll go into the rest of these in detail afterwards as well. So I'm going to open up this macro. Open as a tab up here already. Okay, so this is the macro. It's really straightforward. It's not too many steps, but I think I've already run this one. Yeah, I've already run it. And just drag up this results. So here I've got a macro input. So similar to the text input from before, so I just entered in some dummy text. So here we have our Santas, emails, and hints once again. So like I said before, we need these groups into two. So we need them as Santas and we need them as Santees. So the top row here is all the Santas, and then the bottom row here is all the Santees, containing the exact same information because each person plays two roles. So just to show you, the data comes in, and then how we assign random orders is using a random number. So let's just assign each of our Santas a random number. So I've used rand int up to, I think this is 10,000. Yeah, 100,000, sorry. 10,000. Yeah, so up to 100,000 assigns a random integer number to each of our Santas. And then I sort it ascending. So this jumbles up the order depending on whatever random number they've been assigned. So you can see here that now the order of the Santas has been jumbled up. And then we do the same on the bottom. So we assign another random number to all the Santees this time. So I've named that column Santees so I know whether they're Santa or Santee. And then I sort them again ascending. So this is, again, a different order from this top one here. And here's the next crucial step. We join them. So we take the two streams of data from the left and the right, so from the Santas and the Santees, and we join them per position. Because we have the same number of records in each, we've got the same number of people participating in each of these streams, we can join them side by side. So record 1 matched to record 1, 2 to 2, etc., etc. And this is what comes out of the join. So just to double check, there's nothing coming out of the left and rights as expected, because everything will have the same number of records, so it'll always join exactly. So you can see this join here. So in this case, Scully has got Holt, Terry has got Scully, etc., etc. So the next step is to check whether this list works, so whether anyone has matched with themselves or not, in which case it needs to iterate again and do a whole new random order until there's no one who matches with themselves. So if we do a quick manual look here, we can see that in this row, yeah, so Charles here, Charles has matched with himself, and that doesn't work. So that's what this next step is doing. This filter here, it checks if it self-matches. So if we look at this in the filter, it says Santas equals Santees. So very simple, just a true or false. If the Santa equals a Santee, in which case it does, you see the name Charles matches the name Charles here. So if it matches, it will come out the true. If it doesn't match, it comes out the false. So with this macro, if anything comes out of the true, it will iterate again until there are no records in the true, because we don't want anyone to match with themselves. So in order to iterate again, so we have two outputs, the iterative one and the output for the data. So in order to tell the macro to iterate again, we need to make sure that the data going into the output anchor here for the iteration needs to be in the same format as it did coming in. So if we look again at what it looked like coming in, it was Santas, emails, and then hint. So this is why the select tool is here, just to make sure that we're in the same format. And it goes through the iterative output. So in this case, if we were doing it in the main workflow, it would have iterated again. So it would have had one iteration to match all the participants without any self-matching. Let's look at the other one. So the other output. So in this one, I've just cleaned up some of the fields. I've removed some of the hints and the random numbers because we don't need that coming out of our output. And this one here is also, so this one is to clean up the hint column. Because I've made this column optional, sometimes people don't put a hint, they want something completely random. So this field will be blank. So I've just created a little text here to say, if the hint is null, then put none provided, so that our Santa knows that no hint has been provided. And then that goes out to the main workflow. So very straightforward, really. So it comes out of this output here. So I think, I've already run this one. Let me just do this again so you can see live. Okay, so you see in this case, I've hit run, and there has been 4 iterations. So it ran 4 times before it came up with a combination where there were no self-matches. You'll see this error here. It says missing income connection. And that's just because I've disconnected the emails, just because I don't want it to run the email tool. I'm sure these aren't real emails. I've made them all up, but just in case they are, I don't want anyone to receive any random emails from me. So it comes out the output, and we can see who's matched who. So Joey's got Phoebe, Ross has got Rachel, etc., etc. And then this next bit is to construct the email. So let me just go through each of the tools. So this is the text to columns. This one splits out a field that I want on any delimiter I want. So in this case, I want to separate the first names and the last names of all our Santas. So I select the column Santas, and then I have a space as a delimiter, and I'll split it into 2 columns. So you won't have to change this if you've got people with 3-part names or some other interesting bits in there. So I split it into 2 columns, and you can see the output here is 1 and 2, just the first name and the last name. In this case, Gunther doesn't have a last name, so that's why that one's null. And then I do the same thing for the Santees. So this is just to help me construct my email later. You might not need to do this if you don't want to have your email with first and last names. The select tool now is just to clean things up a bit. I've renamed the 1 and 2 to be something that will be readable to me. We've also renamed Santa's 1. So now we've got Santa's first names, emails, Santee's first name, and the hint. So this is all the fields I need to create my email. So in this formula tool here, this is where I'm constructing my email. So I've called it a field called body, which you see here. So if I double click on one of them, I can just see what it says. Let's pull this down a bit. Okay, so it says, hi, Joey. That's why I split it into first and last name, so I could have it just be Joey. You've drawn Phoebe Buffet for Secret Santa. Phoebe's hint for you is world peace and and then the rules for the game. And you can put the rules here, and then good luck and Merry Christmas. So this is what it says on this left side over here. So this is the email that your recipients are going to see. So it contains all the information they need to know. You just put the rules here, just type in like whatever rules you want, £10 maximum, for example. And then the last thing to do is to output. So you want to output to email. Let me just reconnect that again so you can see what it looks like. So clicking on this email tool here, so this is one of the reporting tools. So this one you need to configure with some information, so the SMTP, the port. This stuff you can find in the Alteryx documentation. It's quite extensive, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. This is the from, so who's sending this email. So this is my email address, and so the recipient knows that this is me who's been sending it to them. And then the to, I can manually write in whatever I want. So I could, if I wanted to email one person in specific, I could untick this and then type in their email. I'm just typing it myself again. Or I can use a field, which is why we collected that emails field before. So just selecting emails. And then I have some other information to CC, BCC, and people. I could also write a subject, which in this case I've written, your Secret Santa has been generated. And then this part here is the body. So I could manually write in stuff in this body, But in this case, I wouldn't be able to add in fields. So I wouldn't be able to say, like add in the Santis field. So that's why I needed to create the body in a formula tool beforehand. So then that just writes in the body of the text of the email. And that's pretty much it that you can do for your email. You can add an attachment. I think before last year, I added an attachment with an image of a Father Christmas, I think. You can add whatever you like, maybe the rules again. You can add it if it's an image, for example, just to snazz it up a bit. And then the last thing is the YXDB. So I've just outputted a YXDB that just contains all the information, like I said before, really useful if someone loses their email, doesn't receive their email, you can check it. But again, like I said, if you don't want to be spoiled on who drew who, then probably don't look at that. So that is, in short, an explanation of this workflow. It ended up being a bit quicker than I expected. So feel free to ask me any questions. If there's any bit that I didn't explain as clearly.
That's great. Thanks, please. I've got one question so far. This is an example of an iterative macro. Do you have any kind of key resources that people can look at for more information on iterative macros at all?
Yes, so recently there was a YouTube video brought by Molly at the Information Lab, so one of my colleagues, where she explained macros. So it was really useful. I recommend you check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. So I think it's called the Information Lab.
Great, thanks. I'll grab the link to that and drop it in the chat as well. If anyone else has any questions for Louise, feel free to.
Anything at all if you want to know how I put this image here as the macro icon. Literally. I take it as I explained this really well then.
It was a really great explanation. One thing that I think you didn't go through, is there any kind of extra steps in the macro that you need to go through to get it to work? Any kind of extra setup to like choose which is the iterative and output kind of anchors?
What do you mean, sorry?
So when you set up an iterative macro, there's a bit more setup.
Oh, right. So apologies, I forgot to go through that stuff. If I can just remind myself as well. Apologies. Whoops. Steph, can you remind me? I'm a bit lost actually.
Sorry, I was on mute then. I was just finding the link to the videos. So if you go to go up one.
Sorry?
Go up one.
Yeah.
Edit user settings.
Yeah, sorry. It's been a while. So in this one, you can, where is it again?
Oh, Charlie's helping us out in the chat. Here we go. It's good to have her online for this. So view configuration design.
Okay.
About this.
Yeah, it's not in this one.
View one to the left.
Yes.
There you go. Interface.
So
it was the next one. Go again, view.
Sorry?
Interface designer. It's the next one, right?
Oh, interface designer. Yeah, here it is. It's just in a different window. 1 second.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So sorry, everyone. It's been a while. Yes, okay. So it's the interface designer. So just go through that again. It's click view and interface designer, and this pop-up comes up where you can configure your macro. So the first one, this is where you can put any questions or inputs into your macro. So for example, if you wanted to configure which field is email field or that kind of thing, you can configure these in this interface designer. So in this case, my macro doesn't contain any configuration because I didn't add any other interface tools. So I didn't have any, for example, checkboxes or actions or any text boxes or radio buttons. So this macro contains no configurations.
Cool, thanks. And
on this, yeah, so this bottom one here, this last one is how you would make it into an iterative macro. So go from top to bottom, I've added this custom icon, that's how you would do that. And then here, this is where I specify which field is my iteration field. So sorry, which one's my, yeah. So this one is called iterate, I've selected iterate here. And then the iteration input is that text input in the beginning. And then I have to specify how many iterations I want to do. This is probably way too many, but I specified 100,000 in this case. And then when the maximum number of iterations is hit, then it will error out. So if it's unable to find a match after 100,000 iterations, it will error. And then the other options are to just warn me and then keep going, or just output the leftover records. And then the last option is to the output. So I've just selected all iterations will have the same output schema. So that's why we had to make sure that the setup here, let me just bring this back up. So we had to make sure the setup here was the same field. So the centers, emails, and hint field here. So that's why we had to make sure that that was the same format, so that when it iterates, it knows that it has the same schema and it will error if it's not. So it will tell me that something's wrong with the workflow. So yeah, those are the setup parts of the workflow.
Great, thank you. Anyone else got any other questions? No, I've dropped the link to the video that Louise mentioned in the chat as well. It's on our YouTube channel. So you can go and find that there. There's kind of a bit of a series, standard macros, batch macros, and iterative macros with kind of a basic example that you can download and follow along to as well. So as Louise said, I'd recommend that if you'd like more detail. Other than that, I think that's it. If you'd like more information on our other events, then head over to our Meetup group. We've got a few other using Alteryx webinars coming up. We've got one tomorrow, 5:30, on creating a socially distant seating plan. And then we have one next week on, it's kind of a similar use case to this, but creating kind of pairings to keep your teams in touch. So we do a coffee chats thing at the Information Lab, and it's about creating that. So we have got another question, Louise. So could you go back to how you got the interface designer up again?
Yeah, of course. So view and then interface designer. So I've already got it ticked. Let me just untick that and then bring it up again. So mine comes up right here. So view interface designer.
Thanks. One more question as well. Have you got any other kind of use cases that you could use something like this for?
Yes. So you could use it at your workplace to match maybe mentors and mentees if you have a new cohort of employees coming in. You could also use it to generate random product recommendations, for example. So I have those too. I'm sure there's a lot more use cases as well, as Nick will show in a similar use case in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, great. Cool. Thanks very much for taking us through that, Louise. As I say, we've got lots more events coming up, and if you have any other questions that you think of, then feel free to get in touch with us. We'll also make this recording available as well if you want to go back and relook at any of this content. Other than that, all there is to say is thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, hope to see you again at one of our events soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.